Hello, everybody. Good morning, and welcome back to the latest edition of the Morning Bulletin here on the Blood Red channel. I'm your host, Edward Kay. Joining me this morning is Jamie Findlater, and we're, of course, going to be covering Liverpool's 3-1 win at Anfield yesterday against West Ham in the Premier League. It's 6 wins in a row in all competitions, 18 unbeaten for the Reds. And we'll start with a word on Darwin Nunez. Obviously, I think it was a bit of a typical Nunez performance, wasn't it, Jamie? Really, a bit all over the place, chaotic, missed a sitter, and then got his goal about 5 minutes later. Was involved in the penalty incident. Obviously, played the ball through to Diaz, who then flicked it on to Salah before he got fouled. So yeah, just a typical Nunez performance, really. And do you think he did enough to probably keep his place up top certainly in the Premier League front three? And I mean, Matt mentioned this yesterday on the debrief. Would you like to see him start midweek against Leicester as well, just to sort of keep this run of form going?
I've got to be honest, I don't want to see him start against Leicester on Wednesday evening, purely because I just don't think it'd be worth it. And I think he's in good form, and it does seem like Jurgen Klopp's kind of made him his first choice, certainly at the moment anyway. I mean, with that front three, any one of them could, spring into a bit of form and then suddenly they become the first choice. So it's always a bit fluid. I mean, Mohamed Salah's always going to be there, after the fact, but the other two, you can maybe chop and change every now and then. But certainly in the moment, I think Nunez seems to be the favourite, and I think rightly so, to be fair. The way he's been playing, I think you can see a marked improvement on last season. Not just, there was, a couple of chances yesterday which kind of sum him up a bit. The one which looked easier to not miss, right in front of goal after he got the ball from Salah, and he just sort of snatched at it a little bit, almost toyed it a little bit, and just sent it flying. And then obviously the chance from McAllister, which it's a good technique, and he's had to stretch for it, and he's done well to actually direct it towards goal. So he's actually scored the harder chance for me, but that kind of sums him up a little bit. But at the same time, I think, he is still a bit chaotic and what have you. But at the same time, I think you saw a little bit of him developing as a player, especially from what Klopp wants from him in terms of, doing a bit of defending. You saw in the build up to the goal, he's picking that up fairly deep in his own half and then setting Diaz off, getting himself up again to try and get involved in the attack. So that's really good to see from him. We're seeing, a player who is developing under Klopp now. And to me, especially at the moment, I think he is the first choice. Against Leicester on Wednesday, I'd go Gakpo and Jota, but just to give them a bit of time and hopefully get them a bit of form. But for me at the moment, I think Nunez has to start in the Premier League.
Yeah, spot on. He definitely got the more difficult of the two chances. It's always difficult when it's sort of coming over your shoulder like that. But you mentioned Jota there. Obviously, maybe him and Gakpo will find their way into the side in that midweek fixture against Leicester. But just on Jota specifically, obviously comes on, gets his goal. I said to Matt on the debrief last night, I'm not sure there's another striker that Liverpool have who would manage to get such a kind bounce in the 6-yard box and somehow find acres there. But he always manages to do it, always manages to get his shot off. But do you think there's any danger of him maybe developing a bit of a reputation, at least in Klopp's eyes, as a bit of a super sub? Because obviously, as a manager, you love to have those players, but as a player, it's not really a reputation that you want to be developing for yourself, is it?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Jota, because he is one of those players, or seemingly one of those players, who can almost look a bit anonymous in a game for a long period, and then just suddenly get you a goal or two. It's a strange one, because whenever I've watched him, I love him, and I think he is a great player, but he does seem to drift in and out of games a little bit, and there are times when you just almost forget that he's there until he scores. And he does have a happy knack of, being in the right place at the right time. We saw it on Sunday, right there on the line to just turn it home. For me, I think he almost does need a bit more game time. I think, especially against Leicester this week, maybe in the Europa League as well, just to kind of work on that a little bit. He has, I suppose he's maybe suffered a little bit in the sense that he's not been in a sort of fixed position throughout his career. He's always either been on the left, in the centre. I think at times he's maybe also been on the right, where if he's coming on for Salah or what have you. So he's never quite been in the same position for any stretch of time. Whereas I think now with Gakpo in the side, I think you've got the ability to say to him, like, you're going on the left, you're going to be, vying with Diaz for that position. I mean, you can still use him as centre forward, obviously, but on the left is going to be your position now, and hopefully you might be able to see him developing a bit more and getting the best out of him.
Yeah, we'll move on to chat about the defence then. Obviously, in the title, talking about Joel Matip's future. His contract is up in June 2024. And just wanted to get your thoughts on his performance yesterday, because I have to admit, watching him when he played in pre-season, I think a lot of us were worried that maybe it might be a bit of a Fabinho problem. Maybe his legs had gone a little bit, but that does seem to have just been maybe wasn't quite up to fitness yet. Because I mean, a pretty good performance yesterday. Him and Joe Gomez dealt with that right flank really well. But do you think Liverpool are going to have to look to start? I mean, looking for a Matip replacement in the summer?
I think regardless of whether he gets a new contract, I think they will have to look for if not a replacement, and if you like. I think that does come. I mean, obviously they have Konate already, but at the same time, Konate's had his fair share of injuries. Matip's had his fair share of injuries. So I think even if Matip were to sign a new contract, I think you have to get a new defender. You have to get a new defender in anyway. Hopefully, it's a left-footed centre half to act as backup to Van Dijk, because frankly, Liverpool haven't really got anyone to actually cover us. So get a new left-footed centre half in, and if you can, get another centre half to go alongside. I mean, especially if you can get a sort of right-footed one who could maybe cover for Trent. I mean, Gomez did a good job yesterday, but at the same time, doesn't quite look right in that sort of inverted role. Whether Klopp carries on with that next season, we don't know. But I mean, if he is going to persist with it, then I feel like you need someone there who can cover for Trent a bit better. I mean, whether that's a centre half or whether that's an out and out right back, I don't know. But at the moment, I'd say definitely you need at least a backup to Matip, because I don't think, even if he does have a good run of games, even if he is back to fitness, I still wouldn't be quite comfortable relying on him for a full season, and especially if you're going into another season with the same four options. I think you need more to go alongside them.
Yeah, I think it's really difficult trying to find, an adequate backup for Trent, specifically in that system with how unique of a player Trent is. There's not many players in world football that can, play right back as well as he does and play in that inverted role as well as he does. Joshua Kimmich, but I don't think he would be wanting to leave Bayern to come and be Trent Alexander-Arnold's backup, would he? But as you said, Joe Gomez really good yesterday. Obviously, I think he played a bit more in that inverted role against Wolves. It didn't really work out, and he was pushed slightly wider yesterday, not really on the ball as much, and just sort of let the actual midfielders take care of it. But we'll talk about a couple of those midfielders now. Obviously, after every game, I think pretty much we're talking about Dominic Szoboszlai. He just looks more and more comfortable every week, doesn't it? And it looks like he could end up being probably one of the signings of the summer, couldn't he?
I think he already looks like one of the signings of the summer. I think he has been superb, and it's interesting watching him because he can basically just play anywhere in that midfield. He doesn't need any kind of defined position. You can almost just say to him, just go in the middle and just do what you want, basically, because he's absolutely capable of doing anything. And we saw it against Wolves. He can do the more kind of defensive duties. We've seen it again, yesterday. He can ping the long balls like, Trent can to, either side of the pitch. And that's almost kind of what Liverpool needed for a good while, is just somebody who can pick up that role from Trent if he's not there. So that's so encouraging. And just seeing him, I mean, he's a threat when he gets around the box as well. You see the kind of, anticipation from the crowd whenever he picks up the ball on the edge of the area. You think he could have a go here. And, he has just been fantastic. And, it's a good sign when, we're 6 games into the season and we've already kind of, fallen in love with a new player. So it's always a good sign. And for my money, at the moment, he does look like signing the season for me, yeah.
Yeah, spot on. I think every time he gets the ball within about 30 yards, everybody is thinking the same thing, aren't they? But Alexis McAllister, obviously, once again, the furthest man back in that midfield three. It's not the role that I think he thought he'd be playing when he came in. Maybe not the role that anybody thought he'd be playing before, obviously, Fabinho got swiped by the Saudi money. But, I mean, gets that assist yesterday, a really good tackle on Bowen in the box. He did a pretty good job in the 6, but like I say, what you're really looking for is stuff like that assist, unbelievable ball for Darwin Nunez. And does stuff like that just make you a bit more excited to see him play further forward a bit later on in the season?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully. I mean, as I do think Liverpool still need to get a sort of more defensive midfielder. I think, obviously, with Endo, it might be a good option, but it doesn't seem to me like Klopp sees him as his first choice, and I think clearly McAllister is the first choice at the moment, but I think ideally you'd want him to forward. But at the same time, someday, I mean, it almost feels like he needed that assist a little bit just to kind of quieten the doubts a little bit from fans, where people thinking, well, is he really in the best position? I mean, I don't think he is in the best position, but I think at the same time, he's shown the kind of unique nature he can bring to that role in terms of providing those assists, providing, balls over the top, picking out passes which other people perhaps wouldn't spot. I mean, that assist was very kind of Trent. I mean, we sort of saw it against Leeds last season with Trent, against getting that ball over the top to Nunez and him finishing it off. That is the sort of thing that you need, and especially with Trent not on the side. So for me, McAllister, he does bring that kind of unique trait to the role. Ideally, I wouldn't want to see him there permanently throughout the season. Hopefully, they do get someone in January, but if not, I'd feel more comfortable than I perhaps did before the weekend, knowing that he has got that in his locker.
Yeah, I think if we were to go out and get an Andre in January, something like that from Fluminense, obviously their season will finally be over by then, because it was they didn't want to give him up for the Copa Libertadores, I believe it was, over in Brazil. I'm not sure if they ended up making the final. I know they were in the semis at one point. But yeah, I think he's spot on about McAllister. It's probably not where he wants to be playing, but he does bring something unique to the role. And Klopp at the moment has clearly decided what he brings to it is better than what Endo offers. He spoke about Endo at the end of his press conference yesterday. Said he's a great guy. He's really calm. He's improving every day, and we're really happy to have him as part of the squad. But he doesn't seem to have, made an immediate impact since he came in. But that is all we've got time for here on the Morning Bulletin this morning. So, Jamie, thanks for joining me, and we'll catch you next time.